Okay, it's up and running.
Carl, did Jim say he wasn't coming at all?
I haven't heard from Jim.
There he is. I was just on a call with him and he referenced this, so.
Okay.
Afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear-
Apologize for being late. I've been trying to get into the February meeting for the last 10 minutes. Don't know the difference between 2:22 and 3:22. Yeah, there's the sheriff. I thought you were out of town today.
I am. I'm coming to you from my hotel room in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
All right, folks, apologize for being a little late, so we'll start the meeting. This is the Judiciary and Law Committee, a standing committee of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors. And the first order of business is the roll call. And I see Supervisor Bauer, Supervisor Vandermeulen. Don't see Mr. Rogers, but he's here with us on the phone, apparently. Mike, are you on the phone?
I'm trying to, I think I'm here now.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, there I see your smiling face. I do not see Supervisor Zons, but I expect he will join us in a little bit. Also with us tonight is Chairman of the Board Bartlett, number of staff folks, and they are identified on the screen and will identify themselves when they speak. First order of business, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February meeting. See Supervisor Vandermeulen moves. Supervisor Rogers seconds. Are there any corrections, additions, changes to the minutes that anyone would like to suggest? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes February 22nd, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Don't see any. Motion carries. Thank you. Krista, I haven't heard about any public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight?
There's been no public comment.
Thank you. Then we will get to staff reports. And again, if you have nothing to add to the staff report, that's fine. We have it printed in our agendas and we're happy to take a look at it there. Melissa, anything to add to your report for emergency management?
Sure. For emergency management, I think that my report is reflective of what has been going on or what projects we have been working on. If you have any questions on any of those, I can definitely elaborate, but I think that that's where we're at.
The only question I would have is I see you applied for a grant for about $100,000 for emergency housing. And I think, if I recall your report correctly, you expected to hear about that in May, and I'm assuming that that's still the case.
Yes, that is correct. Actually, I just got an email today about it, about some of the documentation and things that have to occur. So it's still moving forward and, still in the process. And we hope to receive the money, like I said, in May, kind of after the emergency housing situation is over as far as the cold weather. But I'm sure we'll still have a need for housing, some people. So, yep, it's still in the process. Like I said, received some documentation on it today, so it's still moving forward.
Great, thank you. I like your colorful pie graphs too. Those are pretty nice. Always like colored pictures in my report.
Right. In my annual report, sure. Yep.
Yeah, kind of like getting the Sunday funnies.
Right.
Well, no, I mean, as far as the colorfulness and things.
Yes. Yep.
Any questions for Melissa? Anything else? Any of the committee members? If not, we'll move on to medical examiner. Yeah, there's Marcy. Anything to add to your report, Marcy?
Good evening. The only thing that I was going to add was that increase of autopsy exam and toxicology exams. Just for clarification on the toxicology, at times we're able to use a state lab that doesn't charge us anything for toxicology, and we base our decision-making, typically we base our decision-making on complexity of the case and the drugs that we suspect might be used. And now we're having to base that and send most all of our toxicologies to a private lab, which costs between $300 and $500 per testing. Because the state lab is so overloaded with COVID testing, it's taking 6 to 8 months to get these test results back, which isn't acceptable for family members that want death certificates signed. So we've got a couple family members out there that aren't happy with our office because it's our office who they're working with, not the state lab, for timing of getting those certified. So we're making the decision to use the private labs in most cases that we need labs. So we'll see a big increase continue with toxicology, and the same with autopsies. We've had an incredible amount this year of autopsies already for both counties, an untypically large number. And our local autopsy suite that we use, Sacred Heart, for some of our autopsies is still not open due to COVID. They're choosing not to do any autopsies until they feel safer themselves as pathologists through COVID. So all of our exams are going to Ramsey County, even medical exams, which we're paying forensic prices and transportation costs to Ramsey versus Eau Claire. So that's kind of an explanation of those two line items that we're already struggling with this year. And when the state lab frees up and gets sending any results back quicker is hard to know. And the same with when Sacred Heart, I touched base with Sacred Heart late last week, and they still aren't anywhere near prepared to open their doors to our services again. So that was just a little further clarification on those two line items that were mentioned in the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Marcy? Supervisor Vandermill.
I'm just wondering if I know that the recently passed bill in the legislature, the federal government has money for state and local governments. Can we get reimbursed for some of these added costs?
I am not certain if we are able to get reimbursed for those or not. We would need an autopsy, whether it had to do with COVID or not. It's just the decision-making of where it goes to. A lot of our autopsies so far we need to go to Ramsey County because of the complexity of the cases. But as far as the toxicology goes, we still have that availability of free testing through the state. And it's our choice whether we choose to go with a state lab to serve the families in a more appropriate time frame, or go with a private lab to serve our families in a more appropriate time frame, or still be able to use the state lab. It's still available to us, and I'm choosing as the department head to serve the families quicker than what 6 to 8 months are. And until I'm advised any different and can lose that argument, that's what I feel is the right thing to do. But I'm not sure we would qualify when there's other options out there that keep a cost down.
Chairman Bartlett, do you have any insights into that question?
No, because they're still trying to figure out what the rules are going to be for the money that the counties will be accepting. You know, I've heard anything from there'll be very little restrictions on it to that there will be quite quite a lot of restrictions on that money. I assume you're talking about the COVID money that the federal government just said we would get. The Towns Association is leaning towards there's going to be a lot of restrictions on it. The last stuff I got from them. I can't remember if the Counties Association sent something out or if they just said they're waiting for more detailed instructions from the state on how we'll be able to use that money.
I have not seen anything from the Counties Association, but I would expect something soon. I have two questions, Marcy. Can you give us some idea of the amount of money we're talking about in terms of the toxicology tests, the difference? I mean, are we talking $1 million or $100 or? Well, I assume it's not $1 million, but
No,
some sense of what kind of numbers are we talking about? And then secondly, are you keeping track of that difference? Because I know that originally the federal money that came through the state, they wanted everybody to keep track of the additional expense caused by COVID.
right. Everything is very closely tracked. So the state lab costs doesn't charge us anything for testing. And private lab, depending on what different levels of testing that we order, is anywhere from about $250 to $500 per testing. And so in Dunn County, we have, of course, less tests on autopsy and toxicology than Eau Claire County, but we are serving Eau Claire County, so I don't look at that any differently in my mind, because I have to be as mindful of them as I am Dunn County. So on toxicology testing alone, that's the price difference per time, per order of testing. And for autopsies, it's about a $500 to $700 per autopsy difference, and double the cost in transportation if we are having a funeral home do the transportation to autopsy. So from Eau Claire, it's about $500 for transportation for one autopsy, transportation fees alone to Ramsey County. And for Dunn County, it ends up being about $300 because there's vehicle fees as well as mileage. So that's the cost difference.
So that could add up.
Correct. That's why I thought it was worth bringing up at this time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions for Marcy and the medical examiner report?
All right, thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you, Marcy. Sheriff, anything to add to your report, or does anybody have questions for the sheriff?
I can just add that we did interviews with 5 jail applicants this past week. 4, and started background on 2 of them for the openings that we're going to have in April. So hopefully, pending clean background checks and psychological and drug testing, we can have 2 jail applicants ready to go in April when our 2 retirees happen. So that's moving along smoothly. The deputy we have a vacancy officially now. Deputy Pete Forbes resigned to take a teaching position in Virginia, and so we'll be doing interviews for that position coming up here in about 2 weeks, I guess. Other than that, I can certainly expand on my jail update with the state inmates if anybody has any questions. I know Supervisor Tripp, that came to your attention at a WCA meeting. I've been working with Wisconsin Counties Association through my position at with Wisconsin Sheriff and Deputy Sheriffs, and working with Badger State Sheriffs on trying to get some resolution to us as counties holding state inmates that are sentenced to prison, but they're taking one every 2 weeks from us or so, or two once in a while. And, you know, we're sitting okay compared to a lot of other counties. We're, you know, at last count, I think we were at 8, and 2 of those might have gone last Thursday. So we might be down to 6. But we're kind of stuck with the cost of housing those inmates while the state kind of has the brakes on taking their inmates out of our facilities. But yet I have 15 beds contracted with them that we only have 4 inmates in, but they won't pay me for the empty beds that they have, even though we're still holding state, you know, sentenced inmates. So it's a battle I continue to fight with the Wisconsin DOC, and I don't see any resolution anytime soon, but there are some bills on the docket to take care of this long term, that if DOC doesn't take our inmates within 10 days, they have to pay us the state contract rate of $51.46 currently a day. But that's kind of a long-term fix. We're still trying to fix the problem statewide. For example, you know, Brown County, Marathon County are sitting on 60 inmates that have been sentenced to go to prison. Prison system won't take them, but yet they're farming out 54 beds of their own prisoners to other counties and having to pay other counties to house their own inmates while they're sitting on state inmates and not getting paid for them through the state. So we're in a lot better condition than that, but it's something noteworthy that I don't know what's going to happen with DOC throughout the rest of this year. If they're going to come up with some money through COVID relief funds to pay us for housing those and start filling our beds, you know, that we're contracted to house for them back or not, but it could certainly impact our budget if nothing comes through there.
Sheriff, this failure to pay for the people on their way to prison, does that have any impact on those transitional prisoners that we've contracted to house with the state? Are they still paying that bill?
Well, they're paying the bill, but unfortunately they've taken 11 of those inmates out, not replaced them. So we're only filling 4 of those contracted
right
beds.
But they are paying for them.
Well, they're paying for those 4.
Yeah.
Not all 15 because they're
right.
full. So it's kind of a shell game with them right now. They were paying us to house their inmates until the end of January. We just received another check the other day. But now they say they're out of funds and they're no longer going to pay us for housing the inmates that aren't contracted, but are sitting in our facility waiting to go to prison. You know, we were going to get rid of 4 last week, but I think, you know, there's other counties that are more desperate to get their beds opened up for their own inmates. So they knocked us down to, I think, 2, and they allowed, you know, other counties to send more people, which is understandable. We're not paying at least to house our own inmates in another county.
Right.
So.
Other questions for the sheriff? Supervisor Vandermill.
Carl, you're on mute yet.
You're muted, yeah.
Still muted.
Somebody must have dropped a cone of silence over your house.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Okay, good.
Okay, I'm working with two computers here in order to look at your notes, so it's a little confusing sometimes. The ordinances you're proposing related to drug paraphernalia and sexting, is it usual that those kinds of things would be reflected in a local and a county ordinance as opposed to a state law?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's the benefit to doing it in the county ordinance is a couple things. It doesn't punish people as harshly as if we were to charge them with a crime. So drug paraphernalia, we've had an ordinance since I started over 30 years ago. We've had an ordinance for possession of marijuana, but we've never had an ordinance for possession of drug paraphernalia. So the only option to charge somebody with possession of drug paraphernalia has been charge them with a crime. This is a less harsh penalty per se. It's not criminal, it's a forfeiture violation. Sexting, like the city of Menominee has a sexting ordinance, and it's kind of been, ours has been pirated from theirs for the most part because of the problems we're having in our high schools with youth sending inappropriate pictures of each other and sharing inappropriate pictures with each other. And it gives us a tool to kind of curb that a little bit versus charging them with a crime, which we could do, but we're trying to be kinder and more gentle now.
Okay, what is actually forfeited in those cases?
It depends, you know, if we set the county ordinance standard with the rest of our ordinances, it'd be around $200, $200 fine, opposed to being charged criminally, and the fine then is set by a judge. So they wouldn't develop a criminal record by being charged with the county ordinance violation.
Okay.
Do you anticipate those will come before the committee next month, Sheriff?
Yeah, Corp Council had one of them done, but not the second one. So I decided to hold off on presenting one and allow you to take a look at both of them at the same time to take action on versus being offset by a month and having to kind of follow those through the county board separately. You should, I assume, have the second one wrapped up and reviewed by the time the agenda goes out for next month.
Thank you. Anything else for the sheriff? We also got the jail report, and I see Brenda's with us. Brenda, did you have anything to add, or does anybody have any questions regarding the jail? Don't see anything. Thank you. Courts. Katie, anything to add to your report? Oh, Brenda. Brenda, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay.
She was.
Beep. Did you get that in the minutes?
Muted again.
Well, Brenda, if you're still with us and you have something, don't feel free to interject at a future time. Are you with us?
No, I am. Yes, sorry. I have nothing to add.
That's okay. Thank you. All right. Court.
The only thing I have to add is we actually held 2 jury trials during the month of March. So I only had one as the date I wrote the report, but there's been one more that's taken place since then. Other than that, nothing else to add unless there's questions.
Questions for Katie? Oh, Jim Zahn's joined us. Welcome, Jim. Can you hear us?
Yes, sorry I'm late.
It's 2 demerits.
Yes, just got back from Florida, so.
I don't want to hear it. That's 3 demerits.
It was actually cold in Florida, so I should have earned my demerit back.
That's 2 demerits. Then. Okay. Any questions for Katie regarding the courts? Nothing to add. All right, thank you. Then who do we have next? CJCC. Oh, Carl, did you have a question?
Just curious, are these live and in-person jury trials?
Yes, they are. Yep. The one jury trial, we brought in about 25 people, and the other one we brought in 45 people. So for the 45 jury trial, we ended up having to space the jurors into 2 rooms to maintain 6 feet of social distancing, but everything went off as best as it could, and we were good to go.
Good to hear.
You have anticipated my further questions.
Slowly getting back to normal. Thanks, Carl. Anything else for Katie? Sarah, CJCC.
Nothing further to add unless there's questions from the written report or otherwise.
Don't see anything. And we just finished with these reports to the full board too. So we got a whole year worth of reports. District Attorney, Andrea, did you have anything you wanted to add to your report, or are there questions from the committee?
The only thing I wanted to add was the governor expanded the eligibility to include prosecutors' offices. So a good chunk of my office is already vaccinated, and we have a bunch more even this week getting completed. So that's exciting. And then I just wanted to reiterate what Marcy had said about the state lab. It's taking quite a while to get results back for DNA results. It's taking a minimum of 8 months. And for blood for OWIs, if there's, they first test for alcohol and then it goes into the drug testing, and that we're looking at 6 to 9 months. So there really is quite a delay on those results coming back from the crime lab. And so that is also pushing back, when court trials and court proceedings continue on. But that's the only thing I had to add.
Thank you. Any questions for the DA? I have one, and that's, it says in your report, you've been working with the VOCA grant manager. What is VOCA? VOCA?
Yes, victim of crimes.
Criminal action.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So based on those meetings, I think since we have a new victim witness coordinator who's been doing that, we've been working with the grant manager, and she basically said that we're doing way too much manual financial work, that our county should be able to run reports for us so we don't have to do all of the personnel costs and others manually. And so I believe we did have a meeting with Sarah Stabenow from finance, and she's going to work on trying to get us new reports to ease sort of the burden that we've been doing on those reports.
Good. I'm all for that. Anything else for Andrea? Thank you, Andrea. Child support. Josie, did you have anything to add to your report?
No, well, on here it says that I was in a meeting with some of our collaborators at Workforce Resources, which I did on the 16th, and we're having a meeting with my full staff this week on Thursday, I want to say. Try to talk about their Workforce Resources is starting to open up a little bit more. So we're going to get an update on where they stand with that, talk about our referral process, because we have clients that need to get jobs and they want to get people jobs. So hopefully we can partner nicely to that end. And they have some new grant programs, one that Dunn County is piloting, that they feel all of our clients should be eligible to participate in. It's just a matter of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, sort of a thing. So we can put all our effort into, referring our people to participate, but we can't walk them through the door, I guess, is the only downfall.
Questions for Josie? I have one, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're working with the FSET operations manager, FSET?
Yep. So that's that stands, it's a food share operations manager. So
Food share.
food used to be called food stamps, is maybe
Oh,
what you're
okay,
familiar with. So now it's called food share. And so we've had a referral process previously established with the Child Support Agency and Workforce Resources, where we have child support clients fill out a referral form to Workforce Resources, and then also a release of information, which would allow my office to communicate with the Workforce Resource staff to find out, did our people show up, what services were provided, were they taking full advantage of opportunities and whatnot. So
Okay.
initially they were, in the past, I guess they were only meeting with an FSET or a food share coordinator. And so that person, I guess they told me, sort of had tunnel vision and was sort of only evaluating the child support referrals for, are you eligible for food share or not? Oh, you're not. So we're not providing you with any services. And the ball was sort of dropped. So they're changing that up. They're going to have our people meet with, I can't remember the title particularly, but it's a different workforce resource staff who will evaluate child support referrals against all 9 of their grant programs to determine eligibility for services. So I'm very optimistic that we'll have better outcomes with this new design.
Does this Workforce Resources, are they the people that have the office over on Schneider Avenue, just south of Stout Road there?
Yeah, they share
where
a
they are?
parking lot with CVTC. So, yep. So
They're right next door then? to
Yep,
them?
yep. So
Yep,
it's,
okay,
yeah, sometimes they're called the job center,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
all right.
So, yeah, hopefully it'll be a good partnership. We also pre-COVID worked with them on hosting job fairs.
Mhm.
And we're going to talk about what that might look like in the future. So, I'm used to working with them in Eau Claire, which was a bigger community and sort of had just more opportunities, I think. So we'll see how this will work here in Dunn. Because we want to, if we have a job fair, we want it to be mutually beneficial, right? Not only hopefully to get our clients jobs, but also we don't want to be wasting employers' time by coming and spending an afternoon and not having anybody show up, right?
Do that a couple of times and then they quit coming.
Yeah, well, so for the child support agency's purposes, it actually it's twofold. The primary goal is to get them employment, which would make them more successful in meeting their financial obligations, right? That's what we all want. However, if we have invited them and they don't participate, sort of another feather in our cap if we get to the point when we're doing judicial enforcement again, we can present that to the judge and say, well, we gave them these opportunities, they're willfully in contempt because they're not participating in these, different job search options. So.
Thank you, Josie. Anything else for child support?
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
thanks to all
One
of the staff.
other thing.
Go ahead.
I put on there that myself and my counterpart in Eau Claire and Monroe are planning to speak at the public listening session at UW Stout in April. Looks like Eau Claire is emailing me right now. Warren Petrick's having a listening session on Friday night in Oliva. So she's trying to convince me to go down to that. So we'll see if I can make it to Oliva or not. So.
Well, Oliva is a pretty exotic location. So.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of late notice, so I'd have to, check with the husband and kiddos and all that sort of thing. But
I'm glad you brought it up, though, in terms of the probably most everybody knows that Joint Finance is having only, I think, 3 live hearings this year. One in Rhinelander, I think one's in Whitewater, and the other one's here at Stout. So it is a good opportunity to look at the Joint Finance Committee live and in person. And usually they restrict testimony to a couple, 2 or 3 minutes. So you really need to be prepared, but it's an opportunity. And I think in some cases it's just as important that the rest of the crowd in the audience hear those things as the committee does, because it's a way of sharing information and building a little sport. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Item number 6 on the agenda, I don't have anything for the meeting. Item number 7, consideration for action to be taken. We have the directional plan recommendations. And at the last meeting, when Bob Colson joined us, and Bob is here again tonight, I appreciate that. We talked about a couple of assignments. One, we were going to develop a policy statement regarding collaborative justice, criminal justice collaboration. And we're going to take a look at that. And the other, we asked that you look at those 10 recommendations that were developed back in 2015 or 16. So we're going to take both of those things tonight. And I want to start with the policy statement regarding criminal justice. And so, Sarah, if you don't mind, since you were instrumental in producing the statement that folks have in their packets, if you want to run us through that, or if you have any comments, Bob, I'm going to ask you to chime in as well, and then we can have a discussion.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to address the group. So the homework assignment from last meeting was to really draft a criminal justice policy. That's where the directional plan really had us develop a criminal justice plan. Through collaboration, Jim Tripp did help set the tone for the policy statement. And then I worked with Bob Colson and Paul Miller to really articulate the implementation steps. So the format that you see in this is consistent with the other directional plan policies that are coming through. But we really wanted to articulate that the policy, and then what steps that we're taking, that we have taken, and that we want to continue to take to really continue bringing that policy into action. So I don't have it up here on my screen. I can certainly pull it up. If you have particular questions, I'd be happy to address. This really tried to hit major areas when we're talking about collaboration, when we're talking about really working with evidence-based programs, looking across the criminal justice system, looking for opportunities to enhance our effectiveness and the outcomes that we have. We also have incorporated into this the kind of some of those principles as far as the criminal justice system that we want to uphold. So those are taken from some of the evidence-based decision-making material out there, but really tried to be comprehensive and holistic when we're looking at the system. And the Criminal Justice Collaboration Council often is the vehicle that really brings some of those actions forward. So that's why we kind of took the lead as far as drafting that document. But it really is up for any changes that the committee sees fit.
Committee members, I would welcome any response, questions that you might have. Sarah, if I might ask, of all of the activities, initiatives that are listed in this statement, how much of that is actually in place right now?
Oh, I would say it's all in place right now, and we're continuing them or enhancing them as we move forward. But a lot of the kind of foundations are in place. A lot of some of the goals as far as the evidence-based decision-making and harm reduction, those have already been approved with our CJCC. So So I think this document helps to bridge the gap between the county board and the CJCC. We do have, active participation with our county board chair and the judiciary law chair. But we also tend to kind of make our own goals and our own kind of action plans for moving ahead. So I think, this policy statement helps really bridge those entities together again, so that we as a council are really following the direction and spirit that the county board sees fit for the CJCC. So a lot of those things are up and running, and it's how we've been operating and doing business. We did try to refrain from using too many program names, because program names can change or grant names can change. So we really wanted to make this, a document that will withstand future scrutiny as well.
Thank you. Bob Colson, did you want to weigh in? Is there, do you have any comments regarding the policy statement, where we go from here with it, et cetera?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to say that it made me smile when you referenced the cone of silence, and so I can remember Get Smart, and that was really kind of a clever thing on there. But regarding the policy, I would say that my job and Paul's job as resources has been to help, in this case, Sarah to get this far with the document. And I just want, your committee to understand that that if we need to go through this line item by line item so that we can stimulate discussion, we're okay with doing that. But it's important for the committee and the remainder of people that are listening in to understand that this doesn't have to be the all-encompassing document. I mean, there could be things on there that aren't there that you think should be there, and you need to have discussion on that. And B, it doesn't mean that once you approve of this document, that if you find something in the future that requires some tweaking or some adding, that this can't come back to this group. And I would suggest or recommend that Mr. Chair, that you consider on an annual basis, scheduling this, for, maybe 1 month reoccurring every year, so that this could be brought before the group, so that it doesn't end up becoming forgotten, and then there are issues that come up and people just didn't realize that there was a way to amend this, because we all know that none of us are going to be here forever, and maybe even in the short term. But this document is intended to go for a very long time. So I would suggest you consider that as part of an action item, either not necessarily with this document, but as an item that as a chair that you consider just bringing this back on a basis. So with that, I guess I'd turn it back over to you, Chairman Tripp. And if we need to go through this line item by line item, certainly can. Or if the committee is satisfied that they read it, they understand it, they like what they see, I think we can move on either way.
Thank you, Bob. Chairman Bartlett, I have a question for you, and then I'm going to open it up. This is a process question. Is it appropriate for us, if the committee is in agreement, that we move that this be added to the directional plan as the policy for collaborative justice? Is that what we're looking for in terms of
I
process?
believe that's what we're looking for from all the committees.
Okay.
The way I understood it.
Okay, and I just wanted to be sure I was clear about that. What I'd like to do is entertain a motion, because theoretically you should have a motion on the floor before you discuss things. I would entertain a motion, and I think the appropriate motion would be to add this to the directional plan. And at that point, then we can open it up to committee discussion. And again, as Bob indicated, if we want to go through it line by line, or if there are specific things, we can do that. So at this point, does somebody want to make a motion that
Jim Zons, I so move that we add this to the directional plan.
Jim Zons moves, Carl Vandermillen seconds. All right, we have a motion and a second that we add this to the directional plan. I'm going to go back to Bob Bauer now. Bob, you had your hand up a minute ago. You've got a question or?
Kind of a little comment that Supervisor Rogers brought up last meeting about getting more involved in the other committees. I think item number 2 and maybe 10 kind of cover that a little bit. Because it is kind of, you might get more supervisors involved. And I believe that was his question.
I thank you. I appreciate that. And I think Supervisor Rogers may have been talking about a broader involvement, but this certainly meets that criteria. Because what we'd like to do, obviously, is the individuals and agencies who are involved in this obviously include the Board of Supervisors. So yes, I think you're correct. Other comments, questions, reactions to this? Again, I'm going to say that I appreciate what Mr. Colson had to say a minute ago. These documents should be relatively dynamic. I mean, you don't want to change them every month, but if we approve of something for the directional plan today, that doesn't mean that it's cast in stone and lasts forever. It means it's the policy that we understand is appropriate today. And when conditions and circumstances change, as they inevitably will, we have an opportunity to change along with them. But today, I think we want to be sure that this accurately reflects what the committee believes and thinks is important at this time. And therefore gives us some direction going forward as well. Mike, I see you had your hand up.
I have a question, I guess, for Sarah's. Number 10, you allude to more active involvement by the supervisors. I know that the county board and then this committee chair is part or involved in the CJCC. Are you referring to more involvement with more county board members, or what was your intent to that particular line?
Well, thank you for the question. And the intent essentially was really more engagement with our county board chair and judiciary and law chair. And we've already seen that in action this year with Supervisor Tripp being willing to take up our EBDM work group. So that's an example of that more hands-on involvement with some of our activities. But it's part of the vision of the directional plan as well to have more interactive involvement of the county board. So while I was speaking in particular for those two individuals, it certainly extends out to the broader committee and the county board as well. Anytime we can kind of have an opportunity to come and speak before you or share what we're working on and doing and get approval or involvement, those are really positive for collaboration and sustainability. So in the spirit of that, that's what that refers to.
Other questions, either for Sarah, for Bob, Chairman Bartlett, anybody have anything that they'd like to ask about? Or
Nothing to ask about, but I think this looks really good. I like short and direct. That's what it should be. Looks good. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. Other discussion. We have a motion to incorporate this language into the directional plan as to policy and CJCC. Don't see anything. Then I'm going to ask for a vote on, Mr. Rogers, yes.
Well, I just had a thought as we're sitting here. This is very good or well put together. is our concept here to plan more for the future and more initiatives that we're going to be bringing into this, or is it more of this is what we're doing now and we're going to move forward with it because it's working really good?
I'm going to respond, and then I'd like Mr. Colson to respond as well, since he's the county planner. My perception of the directional plan is that it gives an outline of where we are today as a basis for where do we want to go? What direction do we want to move in? What kind of things do we want to prioritize? And what kind of things are left out, meaning they are not prioritized? This is Dunn County's version of a strategic plan, I guess. And so to answer your question, I think it does two things. I think it outlines where we are today, and the second is where we're going to go, or where we'd like to go. Mr. Colson, you can probably explain that a lot better than I did.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. I think it's, I agree. I think that that it actually is both. And I think if you think back, you know, I mean, what we're doing today or what you guys are doing today and where you want to go. And I think if you just remember back when Sarah was speaking, she mentioned, you know, that it was intentional that the document is less specific to a program and more specific to the notion of the program, so that you have the flexibility and ability to work within the confines without having to go back and amend it because it's set a specific program or task. And so I think the intent is both, that you can work on it today, but it should be broad enough that you should be able to work on it tomorrow. And that's where if you bring this back on a reoccurring basis, tomorrow we don't know, and tomorrow probably is going to change. But just know that it is intended to address what's going to happen tomorrow, and if it doesn't, there is the opportunity to correct it so that it does stay fluid with the work that you're doing. So I would agree with Chairman Tripp that it actually does both.
That answer your question, Mike?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? One thing I would like to do is I'm actually looking at the language that went along with the report and what we're going to do. And I'm sure that Supervisor Zons and Vandermillen said this in their motion and I just missed it. We're going to pass this forward to the executive committee for their consideration of inclusion. And that's what you said, wasn't it, Jim?
More or less.
Silence means yes.
More or less,
yes. So again, that's my fault for not having clarified that. But in any case, a vote on this, a favorable vote, will mean that we are in approval and we stand behind this language and we're ready to go forward with it. Anybody else have questions or comments or anything that you'd like to discuss regarding the language in the directional plan policy statement? Seeing none.
Chairman, I do have a comment. I know I'm not a member of the committee, but if I'm able to provide a comment, I do have one.
We welcome your input.
Thank you. Just in the policy language, it indicates the rights of victims and the accused are equally protected. And it just might be the paranoid lawyer in me speaking, but technically they're not equal under Marcy's law. Did give victims a number of rights that they have, but ultimately the constitutional rights of the defendant are what prevails. And so if we are in court and the victim wants a trial to go forward, but the defense wants more time, it still goes to the defense. Or if they want to fire their attorney, the right to have counsel overrides that of the victim. So I would feel more comfortable with the language, the rights of victims and the accused are protected instead of equally protected, just because I don't want that to cause a problem.
Can you tell us specifically what section you're looking at right now? Is this in 5D and E?
Mr. Chair,
no,
I could bring it up if you'd like, and you could see it. You want me to share
I've
my
got it
screen?
here on my desktop, if I know where to look.
it's in the policy language, so the very
Right.
first paragraph before the
Yeah.
implementation speaks.
Oh, I see. That's the right, yeah. It's in the policy statement itself. This is the amateur lawyer and me talking. Doesn't it say that the rights of victims and the accused are equally protected? I don't read that to say that the rights are equal, but they're equally protected.
You could argue that, sure.
And I get your point, and I see your point, and I agree that that kind of language, as a matter of fact, every word in here is going to give somebody heartburn. What I see though is not a concern to me. However, if the committee would like to make some changes in that regard, I think we can probably alter that language so that it reflects more accurately what, well, I not more accurately, but makes you more comfortable. Supervisor
Yeah.
Vandermillen.
I move we amend the document to delete the word equally in that paragraph.
And then it would read, the rights of victims and the accused are protected.
Yes.
Okay, you had made a motion, we amend the document. Is there a second? I don't see everybody, so if you want to second this motion. Oh, crap. Now what did I do now? Oh, no, I lost it entirely. Okay. Did I ever tell you how much I'm enjoying this laptop? I lost my document. I don't know where it went.
Do you want me to share mine, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Colson.
You want me to share mine?
Would you please?
Is it on the screen for everybody?
It is.
Okay. So there's the first paragraph right there in the middle of the screen that you folks can see.
Right. And Supervisor Vandermillen, your amendment was to simply delete the word equally. Is that correct?
That's right.
I will second that. And the reason that I do that is further down, it talks about the rights of the victims and the rights of the accused. And I think it's very clear that they are both important and they will both be honored and respected. Anybody have any comments? And you'll need to speak up because now I don't see everybody. Anybody have any comments in terms of the motion? We have a motion to delete the word equally in that first paragraph in the policy. Any other? I'm going to ask the author of the document. Sarah, do you have any reaction to that change?
Nope, I think that's perfectly suitable. I think it still hits the mark with or without equally. So that's just fine with me.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? We have a motion to amend the document by eliminating the word equally in the paragraph headed policy at the beginning of the document. All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So, Mr.
And
Chair,
thanks for sharing your screen, Bob.
you're welcome. So just so that we can avoid having to bring this back, we could make that amendment and that it would go to the executive committee with that amendment, because it, unless you think it substantially changes that, it needs to come back before the committee.
No, I think that we haven't voted on the main motion yet, so I think when we vote to recommend that, we'll include that change. Isn't that the way it works?
Yes, it could.
All right, then we are at back to the main motion, which is to approve the now amended document. I don't think we need a new motion for that, do we? Who's the expert here?
No.
Everybody raise your hand. No, I think we're good. Last chance. Any more questions, comments? Otherwise, we're going to vote on the motion to recommend the language as it's been amended to the executive committee for inclusion in the directional plan. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Thank you, folks. That was
Just
relatively painless.
One
Yes,
comment,
sir.
please. Sarah, did you want to make that correction and send it on to, so that it gets to executive, either to Katie to get it off, or should I make that amendment and scratch that and send it on?
Katie's got the documents, so I think she's able just to make that quick change and send it on, and then you can also take it out of the staff report format.
Super, as long as I know that I'm not duplicating effort. Thank you.
Great.
Yep, I'll send it on to the correct people.
Thanks to all of you. One last thing before we leave the directional plan. As I've thought about it, I suggested last month, and I think that barring any reason to change, I think that the December meeting of the Judiciary and Law Committee will be devoted to taking a look at the directional plan. I like your suggestion, Bob, that we periodically look at the language, and we very seldom have much business in December. And I think we can schedule a meeting at that point on an annual basis and kind of keep current. So that's my intention. That doesn't take any particular action, but I thought I'd let you know. That takes care of item number 7. Item number 8, resolutions and ordinances.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think that you were going to, unless I'm jumping the gun, you were going to homework for the directional plan. Is that still part of this?
Oh, we've got other homework. We're not done at all. Yes, I'm sorry, and thanks for bringing me up on that, Bob. We had asked that the supervisors take a look at those 10 suggested areas of interest, and maybe I can ask Bob to put your screen back up again and show that.
I was going to request that. Yep, I will do that.
And then ask, and I don't know exactly where we're going to go with this.
I'm going to get to the 10, and at least that was the homework assignment, was to at least the 10, and see if there was something there that they think is not relevant anymore, or something that isn't there that needs to be there. I think that was kind of the direction or the assignment.
Bob, is there any way you can make that a little bigger?
I certainly can try, Mr. Chair. How's that?
That's more better. Thank you.
Let's go a little bit bigger. There we go. I can get 8 on the screen with this. Let me just see if I can get 10.
Yeah, we're gonna.
All right. That's as big as I can get with all 10 on the screen, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll do it this way. And again, because we're looking at Bob's screen, I don't have all of the supervisors on my screen now. So if you'd like to comment, please say something, because otherwise I might not see you if you just raise your hand. We had asked last month that you take a look at these, and if you had suggestions that you can bring them to this meeting. And I know Supervisor Rogers had talked about the, which one was that, Mike?
Like, probably like number 9, maybe.
It was number 9.
Yeah, increased engagement. And if you'd like to start the discussion by elaborating on that, I welcome that.
I appreciate it, Mr. Supervisor Tripp. I did not actually get as much time to put into this as I'd hoped. I had a little bit of an accident. But I hope to keep this number 9 on our plan. And a couple of the things that I would sure like to see looked into is how supervisors can become more involved in additional committees. As it currently is set up, we as supervisors cannot go to another committee and speak. We are not even allowed to speak during the public comment period. So we're almost unable to voice an opinion in regards to any issues that are being brought in front of an additional committee other than our own. So that's something I just feel strongly that we should be trying to change. Now, maybe that isn't something that's necessary to be put on this high of a focus, but at the same time, it seems that whatever we can do to get more supervisors involved in more ways, it would be very beneficial. I also go back to an example of the budget. Years ago used to be all of the supervisors involved in the budget, where now it is really kind of streamlined where the executive committee does majority of the budget planning. That's all changed before I was on the board. So I'm just speaking from talking to former supervisors. That's a couple of the things that were really on the top of my mind about that particular issue. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. And for the others, what I want to let you know is that these comments will go in the minutes, and the executive committee is going to take this issue up at our next meeting. And I will, whatever comments come out of this meeting, including this one, I will take to the executive committee, and I'm sure there'll be some discussion about this. It's been an issue. Well, you can see it. There it is, number 9. I mean, it's been an issue all along. And the whole idea of how you keep supervisors in the loop, and particularly now that our Corp Council has recommended that we not speak at other meetings, it's important, and it's a significant item, and it will be discussed. I can't promise any kind of outcome, but I know that it's an area of concern. So again, thank you. Supervisor Bauer, you had a similar kind of comment. Is there anything you'd like to add in regard to this particular issue?
No, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, what Mike had brought up there. So.
Yep. Other comments about the 10 items? Does anybody have suggestions on things that maybe are no longer significant and we can drop, or something to add? Supervisor Bauer, yeah.
On item number 3, the broadband. Now that talks trying to get broadband, statewide. And we talked to Klobuchar from Minnesota and Claiborne from South Carolina, trying to put together maybe going wireless instead of doing broadband. Or they talked about wasting money on broadband. Would wireless be better or not?
I can speak to at least what we've been doing, and maybe there is a committee that is working on this initiative.
Yeah, and that's something too that I'll pop in with Bob after he talks about it, because that's another committee I'm on. Broadband's a big part of the community resources and tourism committee, actually, and Bob is usually takes part in that committee meeting too. But I'll let Bob get into it first, and I'll follow up with him if there's anything that I need to add.
I'm going to interject just real quickly before Bob begins, and I want people to kind of remember what we're focused on here. We're not going to necessarily iron out the fine points, but we are talking about the directional plan being policy. What is our policy? And in regard to broadband, that's a good example of how things have changed. But go ahead, Bob, and then Jim, we'd welcome what you have to say as well.
Yeah, so thank you. I think that, that CRNT, Community Resource and Tourism, has been working on broadband for many, many years, and Supervisor Zons is on that committee, and so he's aware of the work that's being done. And that committee is the one that is coming up with a policy for broadband, and maybe it's the word broadband that needs to be looked at differently. But the idea behind that statement is that every resident in Dunn County should have the ability to be connected to the internet or to some sort of a service, that provides access to all kinds of information, both from medical to recreational. And so the intent of having this is that the broadband policy is going to be broad enough that it's so that every citizen in Dunn County can have access to those facilities. And technology is going to change, and so maybe being connected is going to be different in 5 years than what it is right now. I mean, we're already seeing 5G, but the thing is with 5G is that they claim that everyone can get it, but it's not really available to everyone out in the rural communities yet. So the broadband policy is really geared towards getting access, that everyone has access to some sort of a facility or a resource to that, and then maybe the things that we've done to help lower some of the roadblocks towards broadband is what that policy is kind of geared towards right now. So Supervisor Zons, is that fairly close?
Yeah, and one thing I'll just add, just to help Bob with some of the understanding here too, is that broadband doesn't necessarily refer to like wired or cabled internet. Think of it more as broadband being the term being high-speed internet as well. And it's however that high-speed internet is provided to the whole county. And there's a dog yowling in the background here. It was not me making that noise. So
he needs access too. Yeah.
That's right. She apparently needs some high-speed access here. But as Bob said, don't think about broadband necessarily as being any particular kind of connection to the internet. It's more or less a higher speed connection than one would get with just like a dial-up phone or something like that. And I know it's a big issue just in my particular district that it's one of the number one things that people talk to me about outside of the roads. That's the number one issue as far as what are we going to do about high-speed internet. And so think of broadband more as high-speed internet. And that's one of how we maybe rephrase that issue is one of the things that we're working on the CRNT committee as far as the broadband, the number 3 part of this list and how we go forward. But again, don't get kind of hung up on the actual way that people will connect to the internet. It's more about whatever that way that it is, making it accessible to everybody where they currently don't have any means of having a high-speed internet connection, if that helps.
Thank you. I have a short story that illustrates that, and I'm sure all of our thousands of loyal viewers will enjoy this. 6 or 8 years ago, I have a friend of mine who built a very expensive house. And one of the things he did, a huge place, he hired a contractor to come in and wire every room, the garage, the outside for television, internet, sound, everything. He had the whole house wired. It cost him somewhere in the neighborhood of $40-something thousand. When it was all done, the guy who did the job was talking to him and he said, I really enjoyed this. It was a great project. and I'm happy with the outcome, but in a few years, everything will be wireless. So if you got several thousands of dollars that you want to spend, but Supervisor Barrow was correct. It may be, the future of broadband may not be cable, maybe some other thing. Other comments about the 10 items. One way to look at it is, are they still pertinent? Are they still things that we think are important to pursue? And I'm guessing in most cases, and some of these are sort of process oriented, the public information and the addressing demographic changes. Those are things that are goals that I think we need to continue to meet. Others are more specific project type things like the broadband, frankly, like the CJCC policy, like the neighbors perhaps. But taken together, I think they give us some idea of where we want to go. One of the things I might suggest that we consider adding is, as a matter of fact, it may be two things or maybe one thing rolled into one, is the idea of economic development and housing. I think both of those are issues that are kind of at the forefront now, and they may be things that the county wants to devote more attention to going forward.
Do you see those as two separate items, or do you think that they are just rolled into one?
Yes, I see them as two separate items, and I see the way they could be rolled into one.
Okay.
They really have a strong connection, but so does broadband, for that matter. If you want to talk about economic development, broadband, and as a matter of fact, Jim Zahns will appreciate the whole idea of rural tourism as a piece of economic development, and that's tied to broadband as well. So it's going to take a little bit of discussion, I think, in a lot of places to kind of refine what it is that we're looking at, and if indeed that's part of the plan as we want to see it going forward.
I would recommend, just because of the answers, that economic development is pretty broad based. That housing, even though it would fit in there, it fits in with a lot of other things. That it be its own element or its own initiative, and then maybe develop a policy that is specific to housing. So I think that if you bring that up during the discussion at executive, I would say you might consider really separating them so that it doesn't get watered down in the process.
I agree. Economic development can incorporate lots and lots of different things. Housing has implications that go way beyond economic development, and it goes to health, and it goes to some of the objectives of the CJCC. So it's other supervisors caring to comment, and again, these will go to the executive committee for discussion. Supervisor Vandermillen.
I think that number 2, environmental policy and water quality, is just kind of buries the environment into one particular issue and a very defensive kind of thing. I mean, we all know we need clean water, we need clean air, but what we've learned more recently is that we face a global climate change crisis. And I don't think it's clear enough in this document that one of the things we ought to be talking about as a board of supervisors and as a county is, what could we do now to respond to the developing global climate change process? Think of a few things like, where we buy our power, how we buy it, whether we should have more solar, where the county can buy more solar or generate more solar or wind. I often think about red cedar racing. I think it's kind of crazy in a day of limited fuel and global climate change to have cars using wild amounts of fuel racing around in a circle. I don't know if they might want to try electric cars in a race. It would be a lot quieter. Probably wouldn't be
Be
as
faster
exciting,
too.
but it would be an interesting change at least. Even down to things like lawn mowing. It's possible to mow a lawn with a battery operated lawnmower instead of a gasoline operated one. You know, I think these are just illustrations of things that I don't know if county departments are talking about them or not, but I think we should.
If I could, Mr. Chair?
Please.
And I could bring it up on the screen, but we have an environmental policy, Supervisor Vandermeulen, and part of it, one of those does talk about global changes, and it probably speaks to just about in some in very specific terms and some in very general terms, you know, the concerns and issues that you brought up. This is a policy that is going to be it's housed primarily in PR&D. They're doing quite a bit of work, you know, environmental work, if you will, and not just water quality, but just quite a bit of environmental work. But it also, in my meetings with other committees, it crosses over to facilities, with our buildings, and with our fleet. It crosses over into highway in terms of the processes and things that they're using. So I think that if you would like, I could send you this. It's going to be before PR&D tomorrow for their review and consideration, but it is fairly broad-based, Supervisor Vandermeulen, and I think it does talk to probably every point that you had brought up in terms of being not just really focused on a specific item, but it is fairly broad-based.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Certainly.
That's good to hear. I was just talking about that list of 10, and at that point, what you're talking about wasn't represented very well.
Correct.
I would add that I would be interested as a supervisor in hearing a report to the supervisors meeting of these kinds of things you're talking about, what the county is doing or considering in order to respond to global climate change.
And that's really part of the document, and that will be, you know, assuming that PR&D approves it either as is or make some additions or corrections to it. It will be going to the to the board, and and to executive, and then onto the board. So there will be some discussion, but it is on the agenda for PR&D tomorrow. It is also going to be on the agenda both for facilities and highway in a lesser degree, but so they can weigh in on the language because it does affect their operations as well.
Others who would like to comment about the list of the 10 items. And again, all of the comments today will be reflected in the minutes, and these will be discussed in executive, at least brought up. I get the sense that executive may have to devote a meeting or two specifically to changes in the directional plan. When we first implemented the plan, we spent zillions of hours on it. It's probably time that we spend a few kind of updating and refining. Other comments, anything that should be deleted, added, emphasized, changed? I think we've got several topics of interest that we can present.
So one last comment, and then I promise I will go into the cone of silence myself. So so if anyone's interested, I mean, those documents for PR&D, you can go on and look at their agenda, and it's included in their packet. So if you want to read that, it's there right now. And certainly, if you have comments, you can get them to myself or to a member of that committee in terms of what we need to do. Because even if PR&D says they're fine with it, it still has two other committees to go to. So there's plenty of time for comments.
Thank you. All right. Anything that Mr. Rogers? Yes.
But now, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not allowed to go to PRD and speak anything there, correct?
Well, you're allowed to go, but you're not allowed to talk.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you can't communicate with the chair or the committee members ahead of time. That's not only appropriate, but you know, when I get comments from supervisors not on this committee, I feel kind of flattered that somebody's paying attention. I think committee chairs welcome that kind of input.
And I believe if a supervisor goes to another committee meeting and asks the chair if they can speak, and it's all right with the rest of the committee to hear that supervisor, then they can. They just can't speak at public comment because they're not a part of the public. Our corporation council is ruled.
It's another good point. Yeah, our corp council is a stickler for the rules, but Chairman Bartlett's correct. It's not part of public comment. That's not appropriate, but the chair can always ask for input from non-committee members. We do it here. Did it tonight. Anything else regarding the directional plan? Once again, that doesn't mean that we're all done with it. It doesn't mean that it's a done deal, but so stay tuned and stay involved and don't hesitate to share your thoughts. Okay, I think that's it.
If there's no objection, Mr. Chair, I'm going to check out of the meeting then.
You can check right out if you'd like to. Thank you, Mr. Colson. Appreciate your input.
Thanks, everyone.
We don't have any actions for the county board. Announcements. Does anybody have announcements? Mr. Bartlett.
I don't really have an announcement, but I want to thank Josie for planning on going to the Joint Finance Committee and speaking. I think it being in Menominee this year is a great opportunity for us. And the one time that I participated in that, when I heard from other directors from, I believe maybe our county, I think Chris went, but from other counties, I think that means almost more than from a supervisor. There's certain things that a supervisor should speak to, but I think a director of a department knows a lot more about what's going on than what supervisors do. So I just want to thank you for doing that, and I encourage others, if they have an issue in their department, that legislative issue, to consider it, especially with this opportunity. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm sure I'd probably be going to whichever the closest one was, but it's in the backyard, so certainly take advantage of that. And we really want, so Governor Evers put our ask for additional funding in his budget. We really want to make sure that the finance committee keeps it in there. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Other announcements. I have just one. I will be attending a Wisconsin Counties Association board meeting on Friday, and we will be looking at several of the aspects of the governor's budget with recommendations either to support, oppose, or take no position. If you'd like to see that material prior to, well, if you'd like to see it at all, I'd be happy to send you a copy. It's, I have not been able to isolate it, but I can send you the whole document, and it's about 40 pages. The governor's budget was pretty good to counties. That doesn't mean that that's the budget that'll be passed, but so far at least it looks pretty good. Other announcements? Seeing none, our next meeting is scheduled for April 26th, 4:30. I think we're going to plan on Zoom meetings for the next month or two yet until we've had a little bit broader vaccination rate, and then maybe we can get together in person and I can shake Supervisor Bauer's hand for the first time and meet Josie in person for the first time and see Jim Zahns in some pose other than the one he's got here on the screen. No reaction? All right. Thank you, folks.
Oh,
Thanks
I
for
think we're all
everything.
about
Thank you, Krista, for the technical support. Thanks,
bet.
Katie, for setting up the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Take care. And the meeting is adjourned.